Hello everyone, and welcome to the Room of Requirement. Today I'm going to be talking about a subject that doesn't get talked about very much when you're on your spiritual path, and this is about overcoming spiritual roadblocks. So, doesn't depend on how long you've been on the path. This can happen early on in the path, intermediately, or on the advanced path. When these things used to happen to me, I thought it was because I wasn't meditating enough, I wasn't doing yoga enough, I wasn't, doing all the things that I needed to do. And this is something that's very common that a lot of people deal with when they're heading out on a spiritual path. And I think this is something that's really important and it's not talked about a whole lot. So I thought it would be really important to do this video. So tonight I'm going to be talking about overcoming spiritual roadblocks, what they look like, what you can do, and the different phases that you're going to be going through. Okay, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Okay. So initiation. So whenever somebody starts out, they are in the initiation phase. Okay, so this is when you start realizing that there is much more to life than what you see, what you're conditioned to, what society tells you what you're supposed to be doing, all of these different things. You reach this point where you are in the initiation and you're starting to seek and you're starting to learn and you're starting to read things and you're starting to watch videos and you're starting to really figure out what it is that isn't really jiving, that isn't really working for you. And so you set out on a spiritual path. And so the first stage is initiation. Okay, so there comes a moment on every spiritual path when the light that once guided you suddenly goes dim. So this can happen also when you're further along and all of a sudden you feel a complete disconnect from spirit. You don't hear your guides anymore. You don't know what direction to turn in. Everything that you're reading doesn't make sense. You feel like you're in this valley. So the spiritual path is about peaks and valleys, okay? It's about, one day you're going along and everything's good and you're feeling really disconnected, and then boom, everything goes black, okay? So there's several things that can be happening there. For one, if you're practicing any kind of energy manipulation, you're going to experience what we call meridian burnout. And these things are temporary. They're nothing to be afraid of, but they last from days to weeks, sometimes months. I've been through these cycles a lot in my spiritual path over the last 25 years. And I always blamed myself and thought something was wrong. But this is completely normal. And this happens. So when this does happen to you, just realize that you are in the valley and you're not a peak. Okay, so this is just like a roller coaster. The spiritual path is not easy. A lot of things start coming up to the surface. A lot of emotions will start to surface once you start to know thyself. Okay, so this is one of the most important things on the spiritual path. When you start delving deep and get really into your spiritual path, then you will reach these plateaus where it feels like nothing's happening. You're not going to feel the energy manipulation. Your meditation, when you close your eyes, it may go black. All these different things, but this is completely normal. And I really wanted to talk about this because a lot of people are going through this at the moment, and it's not your fault. It's just something that's completely temporary. Remember, nothing is permanent, and it will eventually get better. I just came out of a week and a half low, and then I felt completely disconnected, unmotivated. All of these things were happening. And I knew from previous experience that it was just a temporary thing. So don't be alarmed by these things. But I kind of wanted to give, information in this video so that you understand what's happening to you, so that you don't freak out and think that you're doing something wrong. Okay. So the synchronicities fade, the meditation feels empty, the guidance that used to flow effortlessly becomes silent. You wonder, what did I do wrong? But what if this silence isn't punishment? What if it's initiation? So when we go through these cycles of initiation and we feel disconnected, when we do come back, we come back even more powerful and understand a whole lot more. Because basically what's happening is you are in an integration phase. If you are learning a whole lot of information in a short amount of time, Your body and your nervous system, because of the frequency uptake, either lower or higher, you need to adjust to that, and your body needs to adjust to all of the information that's coming in. Think of your body as like a battery, okay? And so sometimes if we deplete that battery, we don't give ourselves enough time to recharge it, then we will start experiencing these symptoms. So I hope this one really helps you guys. I know a lot of people struggle with this, and I just want to explain what's going on, because there's not a lot of people out there that are explaining what's going on. I had to learn all on my own. Okay, so from awakening to enlightenment. So every mystic, every initiate, every soul that has ever crossed into the higher consciousness has walked through the valley. The roadblocks you face, fear, exhaustion, confusion, emotional chaos, they are not barriers. They are refiners, okay? So think of it in terms of alchemy. You're burning away everything else that was old, and you're rebuilding for the new. But when you're in it, you cannot see it. And so it seems like it's going to be permanent, but it is absolutely not. So tonight we're going to explore what it really means to face these thresholds. We'll look at the path from awakening to enlightenment, not as a straight climb to the heavens, but as a living spiral, each loop bringing you deeper into truth. We'll uncover what the ancient alchemists, mystics, and occult initiates knew, that transformation happens not by escaping resistance, but by meeting it consciously, facing it head on. So if you've ever felt like your light was flickering, if you've ever wondered why your spiritual journey feels like unraveling, then ascension, stay with me, because we're going to, I'm going to walk you through right now what might be a breakdown that you perceive as a breakdown, or if it isn't one at all. It might just be your initiation path. And like I said before, once these happen, it tenfold when it comes back. Your motivation comes back, your connection is even stronger, your psychic abilities become stronger, all of these things become stronger. You just got to have the patience to work through it. And this is all about the journey, it's not about the destination, right? So stepping onto the path. When we first awaken, it feels like stepping into sunlight after a lifetime of shadow. Everything shimmers, colors are brighter, intuition is stronger, reality somehow is more alive. You start to sense energy, synchronicities multiply. The universe feels like it's finally speaking your language. But here's the secret that no one tells you at the beginning. Awakening is only the invitation. It is the spark that lights the fuse, not the explosion itself. Because the moment the soul awakens, everything that is not aligned with the light begins, is lined with that light begins to surface. Old patterns, buried trauma, false beliefs, they all rise to meet the light, and that's when the real work begins. The ancient Hermetics called this process the great work, the alchemy of turning lead into gold. But that gold isn't out there waiting to be found. It's forged within you. It is forged inside of you. And this is the process that you're feeling. Stepping onto the path. Think of your life as an alchemical vessel. Every challenge, every emotional storm, every quiet night where you feel lost, that's the heat of the transformation. It's the fire refining the metals of your being. This is why the spiritual path isn't a straight climb towards the heavens. It's a spiral, looping through light and shadow, descent and ascent, death and rebirth. You don't climb away from the darkness. You circle through it until it becomes illuminated. So if you're in one of those heavy, foggy seasons and it feels like you've lost the connection you once had, know this: you haven't regressed. You've entered a deeper octave of your journey. Okay, so you have not taken a step back. This isn't one step forward and 3 steps back. This is the gold that they're talking about in alchemy. This is you forging ahead and integrating everything that you've learned. So it's nothing to be afraid of or disappointed about. Walking the esoteric path. Each cycle of awakening returns to the same lessons, but at a higher vibration. The form changes, the energy deepens. The Sufis call this journey of return The Kabbalist saw it as the path of the serpent winding up the tree of life. In alchemy, it's the dance of the solve et coagula, to dissolve, reform, and dissolve again, until nothing false remains. Every obstacle on this path isn't blocking your light, it's sculpting it. The pressure you feel is the shape of your own becoming. And once you understand that, something shifts. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to awaken within me? That question right there is the turning point. It's where the seeker begins to transform into the initiate. So let's step into the mystery together. Let's explore the true nature of the path, the sacred rhythm between expansion and contraction, awakening and integration, that every soul must pass through on the road to enlightenment. Overcoming spiritual roadblocks, the path from awakening to enlightenment. The spiritual path is not a straight ascent toward illumination, but a spiral, an alchemical unfolding that returns the seeker to the same point again and again and again, each time at a higher octave of awareness. Every genuine seeker encounters resistance, stagnation, and confusion along the spiral. These are not mistakes or failures, but initiatory thresholds, points at which the soul must integrate, purify, and expand. To overcome spiritual roadblocks is to understand that evolution itself is rhythmic, cyclical, and purposeful, governed by both cosmic law and the deep structure of the psyche. 1. The nature of the path. Spiritual awakening begins as an ignition, a sudden recognition that one's ordinary sense of self and reality is incomplete. This awakening can come through suffering, mystical experiences, loss, or deep introspection. In esoteric terms, this is the first touch of the higher self upon the personality, the first stirring of the soul's memory that it is divine in origin. Yet awakening is not enlightening. It is the opening of the door, not the crossing of the threshold. After awakening, the seeker often enters a stage of fervent seeking. There is a hunger for knowledge, rituals, energy practices, and spiritual experiences. The cult traditions describe this as the lesser mysteries, where the student learns mastery over the personal self and begins to align with will, mind, and emotion with higher intention. In psychological terms, this corresponds to the phase of ego expansion, where the conscious mind strives to integrate the unconscious content newly emerging from the depths. It's exhilarating and destabilizing. Understanding roadblocks as initiations. Every obstacle on the path is initiation in disguise. From the Hermetic and the alchemical perspective, the roadblock represents a stage in the transmutation of lead to gold, the lead being the unrefined personality, the gold being the fully integrated self. When the alchemist vessel overheats or coagulates, it mirrors what happens to the soul. Imbalance in the inner fire, stagnation in the flow of transformation. The solution is not to forge progress, but to purify the vessel, to regulate the fire and understand what must die within us so that something new can be reborn. From the occult standpoint, each roadblock corresponds to a specific plane of resistance, physical and energetic resistance. It feels like exhaustion, illness, or disconnection from the body's wisdom. Emotional resistance, fear sets in, attachment, shame, or grief surfacing for release. Mental resistance, confusion, doubt, cynicism, and obsessive thinking. Spiritual resistance, the dark night of the soul, the loss of meaning, or the feeling of separation from source. Psychologically, these resistances emerge as the shadow, the repressed aspects of the self that surface to be integrated. Jung called this process of individuation, the journey towards wholeness. Spiritual roadblocks are the psyche's way of slowing down the process so the nervous system and ego can adapt to the higher frequencies of consciousness. So as your awareness expands, it kind of has this pulling effect on you, and it can leave you feeling discombobulated, like something is wrong. But that's exactly what's happening. Your frequency is rising due to your expanded awareness. You're starting to go further out in the 7 layers of your subtle body. You are starting to understand the deeper aspects of yourself. And when you do this, it seems like there's so much pulling on you that you've lost your way completely. And this is exactly the opposite. What is happening is you are expanding your consciousness to the point where you are reaching higher levels of the etheric realm, the astral realm, the causal body, the subtle body, the light body, all of these things. And it takes time for your body to catch up. That's why you feel fatigue. That's why you feel depressed. That's maybe why you want to just lay in bed and doom scroll. It's like you don't want to study, you don't want to do ritual, you don't want to do anything. These things are completely normal, and when they happen, you need to give in to what your body is telling you. A lot of people will just push through and force things, but the more that you force, the farther away that you are pushing these things away. Just do what you need to do. Keep up with your daily routine no matter how much you don't want to or how much you don't feel like doing it. This is where the ultimate discipline comes in. And I promise you, if you just stick with that discipline and stick with your routine, even if you don't feel like it or you don't feel those energy surges or that shift in consciousness, you are still doing the work underneath and you are setting yourself up for higher and higher and higher levels of consciousness. Okay. The rule of the nervous system and the energy body. Another thing, the best thing that you can do when this is happening is be vigilant about keeping your nervous system in check. You want to be grounding. You want to be doing breath work. You want to be meditating. Even though these things seem hard, make yourself get up and do them because it is the only way out of this process when it does happen. Okay. The nervous system and the energetic body are the interface between the soul and the physical form. When consciousness expands, energy begins to move differently, often faster and more intensely than before. If the nervous system is unprepared, it reacts with anxiety, fatigue, or emotional flooding. Many seekers mistake this dysregulation for failure, when in fact it signals the ultimate transformation. Energetic hygiene becomes essential. Grounding through nature, breath, water, sunlight, and physical movement allow the body to assimilate spiritual energy. Occult teachings emphasize centering in the heart, where the higher and lower forces can meet harmoniously. In alchemical symbolism, this is the balancing of the sulfur or spirit, mercury or mind, and the salt body. Without this equilibrium, one risks spiritual burnout or psychic fragmentation. Psychological perspectives on the inner battle. The psyche resists transformation because it perceives it as death. The ego's purpose is survival, not transcendence. When awakening threatens its control, it deploys mechanisms in defense: rationalization, avoidance, spiritual bypassing, lack of motivation, fatigue, and over-intellectualization. From a Jungian view, this is the confrontation with the shadow and the anima animus, the inner opposite that challenges the self-image. The dark night of the soul, described by mystics like St. John of the Cross, corresponds to the disintegration of the old psychic structures. This individual may feel abandoned by spirit or stripped of meaning. In occult initiations, this is the descent into the underworld, where one faces its own darkness without the comfort of light. Psychologically, it represents the necessary death of the false self so that the authentic being can emerge. The cycles and phases of the spiritual path. The journey from awakening to enlightenment unfolds through cyclical phases, each one echoing the alchemical stages of nigredo, albedo, citrinitas, and rubedo, the blackening, the whitening, the yellowing, and the reddening. Awakening, which is nigredo, the initial shattering of the illusion of separation. The seeker confronts darkness, confusion, and chaos. The ego dissolves partially, making space for the soul's light to enter. The purification or albedo stage, the process of cleansing and integrating emotional residues, karma, and energetic blockages. The aspirant learns self-mastery and discernment. Illumination, synchronicities, the dawning of wisdom, insight into the laws of nature, cycles of energy, and higher planes of consciousness arises. The union, rubedo, the merging of the lower and the higher self, the contemplation of the great work. Consciousness becomes a vessel for divine will. Within these stages are microcycles, times of expansion followed by contraction. Integration follows every illumination, allowing wisdom to become embodied rather than merely conceptual. Common spiritual roadblocks. 1. The ego's reassertion. After initial awakening, the ego often reclaims spiritual insight as personal accomplishment. This subtle pride creates stagnation. The remedy is humility and service, redirecting awareness towards collective growth rather than personal gain. 2. Emotional bypass. Many seekers avoid pain by retreating into transcendence. However, unprocessed emotion becomes energetic residue that clouds intuition. True progress requires fully feeling and allowing emotion to purify the heart. 3. Intellectualization. Knowledge without embodiment becomes sterile. Occult teachings must descend into the heart and body to become wisdom. The mind must learn to serve intuition rather than dominate it. 4. Attachment to experiences. Mystical visions, psychic abilities, or kundalini phenomena can become distractions. They are milestones, not the destination. Clinging to the phenomena prevents the soul from ascending to subtler realizations. So when it comes to this, you have to go in every ritual, every meditation, every yoga session, everything as a beginner's mind. That's what we call the beginner's mind in the occult. You're not supposed to expect the same things over and over and over again. If you have a profound spiritual experience or a profound energetic experience or a shift in consciousness, this is not meant to be felt every single time, and this leads to disappointment when a lot of people try and get this and reestablish this every single time. When you do that, you're actually creating a little bit of block in yourself. So you always need to go in this with the beginner's mind and not expect any kind of experience. Okay? And even when you don't have an experience, that doesn't mean that you've regressed. It just means that you're integrating. 5. Isolation and spiritual elitism. Believing oneself separate from ordinary humanity breeds illusion. The higher initiate remains grounded in compassion and service, recognizing that divinity expresses through all beings. Integration and the cycles of rest. Rest is so important, taking care of yourself. You don't want to bed rot or couch rot. If anything at all, just try to do one simple thing from your routine. Meditation and breath work is number 1. Okay, so just keep these things up. Even if you have a long, drawn-out thing where you ground and do yoga and sunbathe and do all of these things, at least read. But at the very least, I highly recommend at least doing a meditation and some breath work to get your nervous system regulated. Okay, just at the very least, if you can't muster up enough energy, just do 1 or 2 things from your routine, and you can call it good. At least you've got that done. So psychologically, integration mirrors the parasympathetic state of the nervous system. Rest, digest, assimilate. Without integration, the psyche becomes overextended. True evolution honors cycles of activity and repose, mirroring the lunar rhythm of the waxing and the waning. Okay, so this is just like the cycles of the moon. This is just like the ebb and flow. So don't get so disappointed when these things don't happen. They're absolutely normal and they are part of the process. From awakening to enlightenment, the timeline. The journey unfolds in 7 general stages, though not all are experienced linearly. So awakening, the initial realization that there's more to existence in the material world, accompanied by expanded perception and heightened sensitivity. Cleansing, in crisis. Old patterns and traumas surface. This is where your shadow work would come in, right? So if these things keep coming up, the same situations, the same people, the same places, the same arguments, the same frustrations, this is your subconscious mind trying to tell you that there's something that needs to be dealt with. And this can get in the way and make you feel that fatigue and make you feel like you're disconnected if these things aren't being dealt with. We don't want any spiritual bypassing here, right? So when these things come up, you want to let them, you want to express them, you want to let them pass through you, and then eventually it will get better, okay? Exploration and expansion. So a period of seeking, study, and experimentation with practices, traditions, and philosophies. The dark night. A necessary collapse of previous certainty. Spiritual dryness and psychological shadow work deepen into the soul's mastery. Illumination. Inner guidance stabilizes. Wisdom flows naturally. Intuition sharpens and compassion deepens. Integration phase. The mystical merges with the mundane. The personality becomes transparent to the soul. Enlightenment. Not a final stage, but an ongoing realization of unity. The individual lives as a conscious expression of divine will, and the great work is fulfilled. Esoteric keys to overcoming roadblocks. From Hermetic Law. As above, so below, as within, so without. Every external block mirrors an internal misalignment. Okay, so that's what's going on. If you're feeling blocked, there's something within you that you need to address. Okay, so the solution lies in rebalancing the inner triad of will, love, and wisdom. Will overcomes inertia and directs energy. Love dissolves resistance and harmonizes opposing forces. Wisdom illuminates the path and reveals hidden purpose. In alchemy teachings, solve et coagula. Dissolve what is false and solidify what is true. When facing stagnation, ask yourself, what belief or identity must be dissolved? What realization must now be embodied? Occult practice emphasizes invocation of light, not to escape darkness, but to reveal its purpose. Each shadow is a fallen spark seeking reintegration. So that is another thing that a lot of people, it takes them a lot of time to understand this. But when you're learning things and you are practicing this spiritual path, you can learn about these things all day. But if you are not truly embodying these secret wisdom teachings, that is when you're going to run into problems. It's one thing to learn about something and, try to think that you understand it fully, but if you're not actually physically practicing these things and embodying what you've learned, that's when you're going to run into a lot of problems, and the subconscious mind is going to kick things out for you to deal with, so that once those things are gone, then you can truly embody your authentic self and embody your practices, and that is where the gold is. The psychology of surrender. This is really, really huge. Acceptance and surrender are your most important things on a spiritual path. You must surrender to the things that you cannot control, okay? And there's a level of acceptance of what your limitations are and what the limitations are of others. You cannot control other people. What you can control is yourself and how you react to certain things. And so sometimes you have to surrender to your spiritual path and surrender to these things that you need to work on and accept that that's the way they are and that you cannot change them. Okay, I hope that makes sense. The highest key to transcending roadblocks is surrender, yet not passive resignation. Okay, so surrender is the alignment of personal will with divine intention. It is the moment when the seeker ceases striving to become and allows themselves to be transformed. From a psychological view, surrendering dissolves the illusion of control. The nervous system shifts from fight or flight into openness, enabling the higher centers of consciousness to operate. Esoterically, surrender activates the crown and heart chakras simultaneously. This is heart-brain coherence, right? So the descent of grace and the ascent of devotion meeting as one current. And that is the true embodiment. The path of integration and service. So once the roadblocks have been transformed, the seeker becomes a transmitter of light. Serving becomes the natural expression of realization. The occult axiom declares to know, to dare, to will, and to be silent. True mastery is quiet and compassionate. It's not ego-driven. It's not bragging. It's not thinking that you are better than someone else. Integration requires bringing spirit into form, living one's truth with relationships, work, and society. Enlightenment is not the withdrawal from life, but full participation with awareness. The awakened being walks in both worlds, bridging heaven and earth. So there's this old saying, I believe it's a Buddhist saying, is like, before enlightenment, chop and carry water. After enlightenment, chop and carry water. So even though you become, when your awareness expands and you do become illuminated and you become enlightened, you still have to live in this physical realm. A lot of people will try to live in their higher chakras. And I made the mistake of doing this, and it caused a lot of problems for me psychologically. You have to remain grounded so that you can embody the higher frequencies of the divine down within you. And if you're operating from your higher chakras all the time, you're too off in the weeds. The whole point of us being here is to bring the divine down and live it in this physical realm and live our lives to the best of our ability that we can possibly live. So it's very important that you're working on your lower chakras, getting those balanced, because it is the basis and foundation of all the energy centers that run up through the crown. It's very important that you continue to embody these higher frequencies and expanded awareness into your waking life. Get the inside right and the outside will follow. When you are past a certain point, you still have to have something tying you down to this realm. It's like a tether. It doesn't mean you're too grounded and you're going to be walking around, like a zombie or a muggle or someone that isn't spiritually enlightened. It's that once you reach that threshold, it's like the Fool card in the tarot. You reach the World card, you have to start all over again, but now you're doing it with a fresh perspective and fresh eyes. And that's where the real growth happens. In conclusion, the ever-unfolding path. Overcoming spiritual roadblocks isn't about defeating the darkness, but understanding that it is a part of the evolutionary process. Every fall from grace conceals a deeper ascent. Every pause in gestation before a new birth. The timeline from awakening to enlightenment is infinite. Each soul moves at its own rhythm. Each initiation perfectly timed by the higher self. The esoteric wisdom traditions remind us the path is within you. To walk it is to return home again, again, and again, until the seeker and the sought are one. Okay, you guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope this has really helped someone who has been struggling with this. I struggled with this for years without understanding why, until I started noticing the patterns that were going on in my life. And now when these things happen, I just realize that I'm in an integration phase, and I do as much as possible, even extra spiritual work, to help myself get back on track. All right, you guys, if you have any questions, please drop those in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.